everyone. Welcome to the Kate's Bros and Colonel Towner. No crazy looks. Okay, this is the first time we've ever tried this, so hopefully it works out well. Dwayne Cates, Brian Cates, and we're kind of just going to hit the highlights of the last week because there's so much going on. Big brains to share with you their insight on all the stuff going on. So, thought we'd kind of lead off with the trade deals. What do you think about the trade deals, Brian?
Well, I think the trade deals are fantastic. You know, and when Trump, he went through most of February, he didn't have to introduce most of the trade trade reset. He was going to do a reset. If you go back and study what Trump's been saying since the 80s, he said, none of this makes any sense. We're letting all these other countries out there literally screw us. And it did nothing but get worse into the 1990s and the 2000s. They were offshoring everything. They were closing down American industry. We're throwing the door wide open and letting all these countries come in here and sell their products in America. And we're hardly charging them anything, but they're making us pay up the wazoo. And some of these countries don't even let us have access to their markets.
Like Japan.
And it wasn't fair. And he watched this happen for decades. And he was saying one consistent message: we need to reset everything. We need a fair trade deal with all of these countries out there. And so he waited until most of February was spent doing other things, getting Doge up and running, you know, the Doge thing with Elon Musk and some other things. But it was early March he started saying, okay, we're going to do a trade reset. And I'm going to introduce tariffs for any of these countries that don't want to do a trade reset, and they're going to continue, you know, being unfair to us. Then I'm going to hit them with high tariffs. I'm going to convince them to do a deal. And all the people who are entrenched in Washington, D.C., who make their money off the current system, they help offshore everything. They help set up these very unfair trade deals. They were all bought off. They were all paid off. All these people lost their minds. All right, we got 3 or 4 straight weeks of, oh my God, this will never work. Oh my God, this is insane. And then April 2nd came. It would have been April 1st, you know, but Trump said can't do it on April 1st. But April 2nd, Liberation Day, okay, Liberation Day arrived. And the tariffs began to go into effect. It was going in effect on certain countries at that time. And by the end of June, they've already produced more than $100 billion. I think the last figures from Howard Letnick this morning, he said by the end of this year, they fully expect the tariff to generate $700 billion in new revenue. And Trump gets the federal government to a surplus in June, a $27 billion surplus in June. I mean, who saw that coming? And so all these people out there that spent like 2 or 3 months screaming, stop him, somebody stop him. Okay, a lot of them were not doing that because they were afraid, you know, like what they were claiming would happen, the economy would crash. You know, and we get in a trade war and the prices of everything would spike. That's not really why they were freaked out. They were freaked out because they could see it would work. There was a way it would work. And they're invested in the old way, the old system. And so Trump bringing out a $27 billion surplus in June has these people absolutely freaked out. And so that's why this is America First. This is what we should have been doing in the 80s and 90s, but a lot of people that were in our government and running most of our major industries, they sold out Americans for foreign money.
Let me make that point. If you guys go back to any of the Operation Condor articles, podcasts that I've done. Operation Condor was Operation Gladio specifically for Latin America. If you look at all of those countries, Brazil, Argentina, all of those, the oligarchs, the international syndicate, as I refer to them, went down and implemented dictatorships across Latin America in the 60s and 70s. And that was setting up the offshoring of all the American jobs down to those countries because they controlled those countries, to include Mexico. All of them, they controlled them. And that is what we saw in the 80s, is after they had all of their stooges in place down there running military dictatorships, they offshored our jobs down there in order to begin dismantling America. And so what happens with tariffs is it levels the playing field. The offshoring of our jobs with tariffs on them coming back into America basically defeats the 40 or 50 years of destroying these countries so that they could capture slave labor down there and rob us of our, yes.
United Fruit, the sugar companies, they're paying these peasants down there pennies per day. Whereas
Correct.
Those jobs stayed in America.
Correct.
And they're still doing this shit today.
Correct. They've moved from Latin America over to Africa, but this is what their plan is. And by Trump tariffing these oligarchs' imports into America, he has now leveled the playing field. And if anyone could have told me that you're going to be selling rice to Japan or beef to Australia because they're one of the biggest beef manufacturers on the planet, I would have told you you're crazy. And yet that's exactly what Trump's did. And I'm going to turn it over to Dwayne with one last comment. My husband, driving to dinner last night to celebrate my middle daughter's birthday, says, you know what? Trump should have taken a bunch of sticky notes and put them on a chalkboard and told the entire world, you guys come here, negotiate a trade deal, and whoever gets here first gets and have like 5%, 10%, 20%, all the way up to 100%. And the first ones here get whatever sticky note they want on the board. So the longer this goes on, the higher your tariffs are. And I thought that was brilliant. Dwayne, go ahead.
Well, let me say that Donald Trump, I firmly believe, could sell ice to Eskimos. And
he just proved it.
2 points I want to make about Trump himself. And the first is, this is a man that has been building relationships globally, and he's been doing it for decades. Flying under the radar, he's had these relationships and some genuine friendships. Notice how Trump, even when he's talking about the leaders who were screaming at him during his first term, some of them, and during the interim when he's on his way back and he started talking these tariffs, many of these countries, such as the United Kingdom and Canada, started shouting very loudly. Well, now we're watching them bend the knee, because at the end of the day, he doesn't care about, he does care about PR to an extent, but he cares about he's a pragmatist, he cares about the reality. We have the power, we have the economic capability, and they need us. They need the American market. They have to have it. So he's willing to play hardball with these people. He has established relationships over decades. When he created the Sovereign Wealth Fund, I knew exactly what that was for and where that's going to be going. With, once again, April 2nd, Liberation Day, he is unmaking 1913. He is unmaking what could be considered the financial or economic capture of our nation. He's re-engineering, he's remaking our financial structure. And when it comes to these tariffs, I want to point out that he focuses, he's called Jacksonian for a reason. And he also wants to rename Mount McKinley. He's giving messages, kind of like comms, with these statements. He wants to rename Mount McKinley, because if you'll recall, President McKinley was assassinated, and they just claimed it was an anarchist and nobody dug any deeper. very shortly thereafter, America was taken off of tariffs, and we got a a titanic disaster in the form of income tax and the creation of the Federal Reserve, which obviously we now can see Trump is now once again positioning everything he's doing with Powell and the Federal Reserve is Donald Trump is positioning to redress what I consider a tremendous wrong that was implemented against the American people for over a century.
And we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve visit a little later. Did you want to add anything, Brian?
Yeah, there's never been any reason for the American people to pay taxes. Where, if you study, where does the tax money they collect from everybody, what does it have to go, where they do with it? Well, it pays interest on the national debt. That's what they use it for. Well, how did the government get funded? You know, and as the president from El Salvador, you know, tried explaining this to everybody. It's CPAC 2 years ago. Your tax money is not what your government runs on. Okay, it's running on treasury bonds, it's treasury certificates. All right. So what Trump is doing is he's making these people nervous because when he talked about this, when he and Howard Lutnick and Secretary Bissett talk about the hundreds of billions of dollars that are coming in right now from the trade deals and from the tariff revenues, people notice who immediately says, we've got to use that to pay down the debt. We must take this, forget the rebate thing. We must use this money to pay down the debt. And I've been trying to wake people up to the fact that probably up to half of our national debt right now. I mean, what did we just learn from Elon Musk and the Doge team beginning in February? What did we just learn? Well, we've learned that every year, hundreds of billions of our tax dollars is being looted out of the treasury. It's being sent. They never denied a spending request in 20 years. This is what Elon Musk said shortly before he departed. Okay, he said, in 20 years of looking and searching the records, he could not find a single spending request that was turned down. And they didn't have to say what they wanted the money for. They didn't have to put a receipt or anything. It was like, oh, you want $20 million for this? Here's $20 million. And that's how the system was designed this way. And who knows, it's been running this way for God knows how long. I hope we get to find out before the end of the year exactly how long the looting and the money laundering has been going on. And we start to get some type of estimate of how much they actually have been taking every year, and then we can add it up. But I would not be surprised if a significant portion of the national debt is due to criminal fraud.
And I'm not obligated
to it's criminal fraud, are we really responsible to pay that back?
No. The answer is no.
Right. Okay. So we're going to move on. I did want to highlight there is, as Brian said, $105 billion in tariffs today on an annual basis, and that President Trump has signed over 174 executive orders so far with his own pen, none of which were auto-penned.
And he holds it up.
I love the sound of that Sharpie. I just love it.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Dan Bongino's post that he recently made. It made headlines everywhere.
Oh, I have to make an aside here. If we're talking about executive orders, all right, he just signed one yesterday that I've been praying for 20 years now.
Okay, tell us.
We have not had a sane or rational national policy on dealing with the mentally ill, homeless people in this country ever since Ronald Reagan was in his first term. And Trump signed an executive order yesterday to bring back involuntary commitment to a mental institution, which is something that there have been. We have no idea how many people died on our streets because of this insane policy this country's had for going on 40 years now. And it was time somebody did something about it. So I'm really glad Donald Trump, he didn't wait for Congress to do something. He didn't try to lobby for a bill. He just went ahead and did it himself.
Amen.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to read Dan Bongino's post real quick. My tenure here as the Deputy Director of the FBI, I've repeatedly relayed to you that things are happening that might not be immediately visible, but they are happening. The Director and I are committed to stamping out public corruption and political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It is a priority for us. But what I have learned in the course of our properly predicated, very important, and necessary investigations into these aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. We are going to conduct these righteous and proper investigations by the book and in accordance with the law, unlike all of the predecessors. We are going to get answers we all deserve. And as with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will land, but I can promise you an honest and dignified effort at truth, not my truth or your truth, but the truth in all caps. God bless America and all those who defend her. What are your thoughts?
Well, she followed Dan Bongino. I first met him at CPAC, I believe it was 2018 or 2019. I met him while he was interviewing Svetlana Lakova. He was telling her story about how she got dragged into Spygate. And Dan has been on top of a lot of things. There's a reason he had like the #1 show, the podcast in the country, you know, outside of Joe Rogan. But the reason Dan built that audience is that he would go where other people feared to tread. He would cover things in a way that other people didn't dare do. And when he said, so I understand how much he understood about the corruption, how bad it was. The Wiener laptop, the Hunter Biden laptop, the pandemic, the COVID origins, the money laundering, and the shit that's been going on in Ukraine and some other places in Africa. And, you know, that what they were sending back and forth on their secret email networks, using their hidden servers, the special access programs they were selling, the intelligence assets that were executed in Iran and China. And this could be a lot of different things that he saw, that he's talking about there. So I know he understood going in a lot about the corruption that had been going on. So when he said that, when he said, you know, knowing as much as I did about how bad things were, going in there and seeing what I've seen in the last, he's only been there like 4.5 to 5 months now. He says, what I've seen is just blown my mind. I mean, it's just absolutely unbelievable what I've seen. I believe him, okay? I don't think he's trying to blow smoke up anybody's ass here. I've been trying to show people some things that I've seen, you know, that I have. I think I have a bare bones idea how bad it is, but I haven't actually gotten access to a hidden stash room in the old FBI building. I haven't actually gotten access to any still classified stuff, but I'm sure he has, and he has to be careful. That's one thing I keep trying to point out to people. If you are shown something and it hasn't been declassified yet, and they haven't put it out there yet, your job, doing this right, making sure it's done, he mentioned this, done by the book, done honestly. We're not going to become the enemy. We're not going to leak classified stuff to the freaking press. We're not going to do that. Okay, we have to do this honestly. When he says this, that tells me whatever it is, it's bad. But it's more determined than ever that this is going to be done the right way. This is going to be done so that it sticks. And so I take my hat off to him. Hey, Dan, we are with you 100%. You keep going, brother, and we are behind you.
Dwayne?
I want to say that when I read that post originally, my imagination ran wild because, as Brian has just said, there's so much that we're aware of just on what we know, what we've uncovered, and what has been declassified over the past years that when we see Bongino make this comment, we kind of wonder, our minds start racing, our imagination starts working overtime thinking, well, what is it? Was it COVID? Was it Operation Gladio? Was it the Nunes, nothing more difficult than the Nunes memo? Remember, Brian saying that the first time Nunes saw what was going on, he was white as a ghost because he realized our republic was in jeopardy. And then, of course, after the Nunes memo, if you're familiar, came the Schiff memo, and then Nunes was pushed aside and Schiff took over that committee. And once again, we're looking at Schiff. I would say that he's panic tweeting and he's panic posting right now because he's losing the narrative battle, which is proper because he's always been full of shit.
Very well put. And so obviously, with what we've uncovered in Operation Gladio and Condor and the CIA operations, we know that the FBI has been involved hand in hand with that. We know that there are CIA operatives that have embedded themselves in the FBI and
Congress
and everywhere. We're talking about the FBI.
Okay.
And so I can imagine, so I'm not convinced he's not CIA himself, but I can imagine some of the things, but as Brian pointed out, one of the things that's most notable in all of this is the lack of leaks, both from the White House and from the CIA and from the FBI. And I find that very interesting from the perspective of the information control. And I think now's a good point. When they say they're going to do this by the book, the FBI will not only be in possession of FBI generated information, they will be in possession of information that was classified in other organizations. And for those of you who don't know, the origin classifier of classified information has to be the one to declassify it. So if there's CIA documents sitting over in the FBI, which when CIA operations come on shore, either through their terrorist network, when they hide their terrorists inside the United States and those type of things, the FBI may come across someone that is labeled a terrorist, but the CIA will provide them classified information saying, don't do anything with that guy because he's ours. So they will have information sitting in the FBI that was not classified by the FBI, and they cannot release it. It has to go back to the CIA if they're the ones that generated it, or DIA or NSA or any of the original classification sources in order for it to be declassified. And that's why when you're watching what the DNI is doing right now and the declassification occurring in the CIA, when people go, oh, but you know, Radcliffe is bad because he was the one sitting at DNI and he didn't release any of this information. He didn't have the authority to declassify things that had been classified in the CIA. Yep. And of course, Gina Haspel was sitting in the CIA, not going to declassify any of that stuff because she was part and parcel of the setup as the CIA station chief in London. So I just want everyone to understand that Radcliffe could only declassify what had been declassified by the sources as the sitting director. And that's why it's so important to have all of these positions being filled with patriots.
Okay, I know we're gonna cover Spygate at the end, but I need to say this right now because it ties into exactly
We can
what you're
cover it
talking
right
about.
now. We can cover it right now.
Okay, it was just announced by Ratcliffe on Maria Bartiromo's show this morning that the annex to the Durham report, the annex that's been classified for all these years, Ratcliffe is going to declassifying it. Okay, he hasn't done it yet, but he's going to. And immediately, I see all these people out there going, "Why didn't Durham disclose this? Why Durham had to have this? It was included in his report. Why didn't he disclose this to the public?"
Or Ratcliffe.
And I keep having to tell people the same thing over and over again. Durham has no classification powers.
Correct.
He can't classify anything. But the only thing he can do, he can ask the judge or the attorney general to seal something in a court case. He can do that. But as far as classifying or declassifying stuff, no, he can't do that. So he can politely ask the CIA, "Would you mind declassifying it?" But if they tell him, "No, go away," okay, what can he do? He's not gonna leak it. I don't care how much you don't like that. He's not gonna leak it. If he's told, "I would like to declassify this," not only do I want to declassify it, I want to charge some people based on this. And he's told by the CIA, "Go pound sand." All right. If that's what he's told, then he's not going to make an illegal leak, and he's not going to do anything outside the scope of his investigation set by the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. He's not going to do anything illegal. Sorry.
I'm listening to people right now bash Ratcliffe. Why didn't you do this earlier? Well, I'd like to ask them, well, why didn't Trump do any of this during his first term? He was boxed in. He was working with people that were unremittingly hostile. Right now, can I point out that we have a Senate that's supposed to be GOP, and he can't get his people nominated. He can't get his people passed. What is that? Okay. But also, like, for instance, Dan Bongino, today yesterday when he posted this, James O'Keefe is saying we have a right to know. And I'm like, pardon me, but the F you do. You don't have the right to know anything that's classified. These people take these operations and these investigations seriously. I'm going to try to control my language and my temper here. I don't give a flipping damn about your social media account or your clout. I don't care. Neither does Dan Bongino, Kash Patel Pambandi, or President Trump. These are serious investigations. And when I'm listening to people bash Ratcliffe or demand details from Bongino, the people have a right to know. You have a right to the truth when the investigations are completed. You have a right to the truth when these people have completed their investigations and identified suspects, perpetrators, and victims. And it is adjudicated either with a no bill or a bill and an indictment. And until then, I tell people like James O'Keefe can go pound sand.
So since we're on the topic, Brian, what's your take on the DNI Gabbard releasing the Russian intelligence memo?
There's a difference between suspecting something happened. You have different pieces of the puzzle, and you're filling in the blanks, which is basically what a lot of Spygate people have been doing since we started digging into this back in 2017. I did. I know some people were already on the case before I was. I didn't really start researching Spygate and commenting on it until James Comey got fired. I was aware of the Steele dossier. I was aware of Flynn being forced out, but I wasn't actually digging into anything at that time. So from about June 2017, when I joined Twitter DM room where we started sharing what we had with each other, all of these citizen journalists and citizen researchers. We didn't have, there was a lot we didn't know, but we could fill in the blanks. The thing about being a court of law is you are not allowed to guess about anything. You can't say, I suspect. You can't say, I know this person did this, because the other side's going to demand to see the evidence that you have that proves that that person did that. So some people might dismiss what Tulsi Gabbard has been doing for the last week when she revealed how Obama wasn't happy with the first intelligence community assessment on Russian interference in the 2016 election. And he told all those people, you go back and you sit your ass down in your office and you write a new ICA that will allow me to make the moves on Russia that I want to make. And he ordered them to do that on December 9th. And then by December 29th, I think it is, he expels 30 Russian diplomats and he hits Russia with a bunch of these sanctions for interfering in our election. And he could do that because of the revised ICA that he was given. Okay. I suspected he had done that. We couldn't prove it because the damn ICA was classified. Nobody was allowed to see it. So now we can prove what Obama did. We are not suspecting what Obama did. We're not sitting around kicking around theories about what Obama did. The paper trail has been declassified. He looked at the original assessment. He said, I can't use this. You go back and plant your ass in that chair and you write me something I can use. I want to lay a big old booby trap for the incoming Trump administration. Okay. So I want to create an international crisis with Russia that I can leave behind me. I can drop it like a hand grenade in Trump and Flynn's lap, and then I can weaponize how they try to diffuse the hand grenade, which is exactly what they did. So there's a difference between suspecting what they did and being able to prove exactly what they did. And that's why what Tulsi is doing is so important. She is declassifying stuff that's been hidden behind, they've hidden a lot of stuff over the years. And so we've had to engage in guesswork. And one reason I'm excited about where Spygate is going right now is the amount of guesswork we have to do is going down because of all of these new declassifications that are happening.
And what's to me critically important about this, with what Brian just talked about, for my audience that have followed the revelations of Operation Gladio and the interplay between the State Department, the CIA, and the presidency and the National Security Council, has been critical to paint the picture of how this operation works. And the dropping of these bombs for the next administration is critically important to ensuring their ongoing operations and the covering up of those ongoing operations. Just like what happened with the transition from Eisenhower to JFK. You guys have heard me say many times that Eisenhower authorized the execution, the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And it occurred 3 days before JFK took office. It has now been, through many books, exposed that JFK was in office at least a couple of weeks before he even knew that assassination had occurred and that there had actually been a finding to happen or to make it happen. And so while this is bombshell material to a lot of people, that you have such evilness sitting in the White House doing these things, those of you who followed me for a long time understand exactly how this works. It has happened time after time after time, and their evilness knows no bounds. Did you want to say something?
When it comes to Hillary plan. I think it was longer than that. I think Bush was part of the plan, so it's longer than 16 years, obviously. But Hillary was supposed to win, and the fact that she didn't win, the torch was not passed from Hillary to Obama. What they did pass was the Russian collusion hoax. They were able to pass that off, and then Obama and his people weaponized it and used it against a president. That smooth transition, which was a complete and utter lie. And then they expounded it and basically did everything they could to sabotage Trump and sandbag him for 2 years, almost 3 years before Russia was fully debunked. But I just want to point out again, the Russians are a nuclear power, and Barack Obama, the same way he knew Flynn was innocent, the same way he knew Trump was not colluding with the Russians, he also expelled all of those diplomats and their families. Now you don't care because they're Russians, and who cares? But he created an international incident that he knew Trump was going to have to try to solve, and General Flynn. And then they weaponized Flynn's response with the leaked email from Kislyak that was handed by someone, but we think they know who that was now. We're going to find out who that is eventually. With the link to the David Ignatius at the Washington Post. So all of this, it involves basically Obama and the people that were working are, I don't know what their mindset is other than they have to protect the swamp. They have to protect Operation Gladio.
The international syndicate.
The international syndicate. It has to be protected.
I just want to point out what you said. Yeah, this started way before Obama. This did not begin with Obama. This started with George Herbert Walker Bush. And the Gulf War, all the careful machinations they did with Iraq and Saddam Hussein. This started with George H.W. Bush, who then lost to Bill Clinton. And they put Clinton in there. And then Clinton was making the move, sending missile tech to China and all that other shit that he did. And then Clinton is supposed to make the handoff to go, oops, he loses the W, and we get 9/11, So they went from the first Gulf War to 9/11, invasion of Afghanistan. In 2006, we have the invasion of Iraq. It's all connected, okay? It's all connected. So yeah, this did not, by any stretch of the imagination, this did not start with Obama.
Yeah, and that's a huge point. Okay, we want to last touch on a couple of other things. One of them, obviously, near and dear to my heart, since Trump has retaken office. We know that he had, during his first term, withdrew us from the Paris Climate Agreement, and that he's now basically withdrew us from the WHO a second time, and most recently from UNESCO. Are you guys familiar with UNESCO and what they do?
Not really.
Okay, so UNESCO is a very interesting, obviously, it's UN. And it has supposedly to do with heritage sites. So again, the audience that's followed me understands that besides all of the governmental swamp that we talk about, there are, as you are all finding out, massive amounts of NGOs and other transnational organizations that enable all of this to happen. One of them is UNESCO, and you can't talk about UNESCO without going back a little further of one of their affiliated organizations, the World Wildlife Fund, that has the little panda logo.
I have heard of them. Okay.
So the World Wildlife Fund had put into operation alongside Gladio these designated national parks. So when we go in and topple a government, especially over in Africa, they would set up these national parks weirdly enough, the national parks did not have locals guarding them. They had these UN and paramilitary type police doing that. And on these, a lot of them happened to be co-located along the border of a country that we wanted to overthrow or that we wanted to interfere with. And they would set up paramilitary activity on these sites. Well, along comes UNESCO, and they start designating all of these worldwide wildlife preservations under the UNESCO program. And so UNESCO has been part of that operation. And I want to just read off a couple of things about UNESCO. In 1984, a $165 million slush fund was set up under the International Program for the Development of Communications. Auditors found that half of that money was skimmed off the top and used for other things. In 1989 through 1994, they set up the World Heritage in Danger Program, which used off-books cash in paying off governments in order to be able to designate certain sites as UNESCO. In 1995 to 2003, the oil for food pipeline, UNESCO staff in Baghdad took 2% kickbacks on every UNESCO contract funded by the UN Iraq Oil for Food program.
Holy shit. Okay.
They buried the audit. In 2001, the World Conference Against Racism, UNESCO co-sponsored an event that devolved into open anti-Semitic rallies to divide people, and follow-up budgets were routed through NGOs that financed PLO operations. So they were purposely agitating a divide between Jewish and PLO while funding one side but crying on the other side. In 2003 to 2010, there was a program called Memory of the World that was in Syria and Libya, where archivists bribed committee members to register the Ba'ath Party propaganda as documented heritage. Now, that's very important because that's exactly when we were going into Iraq. And you notice one of the very first places that they went was one of the heritage sites in Iraq. So these people, and there's many more, but you get the point. They go in and they authorize these heritage sites, and then through war or coups or whatever, they raid the heritage sites because they've documented what's in them. And these things make them make themselves to the black market, and then they provide another source of off-book fundings. So taking us out of UNESCO was huge.
And I add this. Okay. The reason they invest so much in the last 40 years in this climate change, these climate accords and all this bullshit, they have two main reasons that they do that. One is, like you were discussing, it's a massive theft and money laundering enterprise of the world's resources, how they steal it for the good of the planet. And they funnel it back to themselves through all their organizations and NGOs like Solyndra. And it's all one big, massive money laundering grift. But the other reason they do this, to try to convince people we need to cut the world's energy creation to save the planet. The reason they do that is energy control is
People control.
Energy control is tech control, technological control.
Yep.
You can technologically freeze people in place if you have control of the energy resources. And so a big part of their agenda for the last 40 years has been to convince the public, now don't fight us. We want to save the planet. Don't fight us during this. Let us have control of the energy resources. and we'll get rid of all this bad nuclear stuff. And we'll start ramping down the electrical grid and the coal stuff. And we'll start building more wind farms and solar farms, solar panels. We must do this to save the environment. So they're basically looting all of these countries around the world. They're looting them and they're stealing massive amounts of money every year. And they're also holding the world in like a technological stasis. They're freezing everybody. This is one reason why what Trump is doing is really pissing them off. You may remember about 2 months ago, Trump signed another one of those cool executive orders about bringing back supersonic flights. It turns out they had environmental reasons. We can't have any supersonic flights. We're going to freeze the Concorde right where it is. And we're not going to let the Concorde do any innovation or any improvement until it dies. Okay? And we're not going to have any supersonic flights going around the world. And because the sonic boom, it's too noisy, and we must protect the environment. And they sold this bullshit to everybody for like 30 years. And here comes Trump. Yeah, forget that. And he signs an EO and holds it up. Okay, we're bringing back supersonic flights. Screw your technological freeze.
Imagine something the size of Starship, Elon Musk's Starship. Imagine something with about 600 or 800 people on it that takes off out of Australia, and less than an hour later, okay, it takes off, goes suborbital, and then comes down in New York and lands.
What would that do to efficiency?
Efficiency?
Yeah,
It
it would make the entire world
revolutionize it.
Yes. And that's why the people who want to control the science, they only control the science to keep us in the dark and them enlightened.
Control methods.
We all know the gasoline engine, the combustion engine was obsolete 100 years ago. But the vested interest, they've held everything literally in a technological status for decades. And they weren't allowing any moving on from it. And here comes Trump, and one of the things I expect to see happening in this golden age that we're entering right now. All of these technological advancements that have been hidden and suppressed by moneyed interests who want to keep things the way they are. Trump is overturning their tables in their temples, so to speak. And so all of the technological advances in travel, in energy, are being removed. And it's a beautiful thing, man.
We're being prepared for actual citizenship, because up till now, we weren't really Americans. I mean, we may call ourselves American. I haven't got my passport. I don't have a passport. If I had a passport, I'm an American. Okay, no, we were sharecroppers in our own country until April 2nd. We were basically a debtor nation. We didn't realize that they rebranded everything. They didn't call us debt, slaves or sharecroppers, but we were, and that's changing. Also, when it comes to MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, what we're going to find out is disease control was being utilized as a control method. It was people control. Look at Fauci. Look at the Rockefellers. Homeopathic medicine was basically erased, and now we're rediscovering it. We're rediscovering genuine medical and homeopathic remedies that help us to get or become or stay healthy, and that is the control methods. Again, I've been talking recently about MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. They had to be crowbarred out of here because they were a control method. Now, the fact that the mainstream media did not cover this honestly and actually tell you what they were doing here, and a lot of the mysterious things that were happening in our country, they never associated MS-13 or Tren de Aragua with them. One of the recent slip-ups was the Pacific Palisades fires, when they caught, and again, the media called him a homeless man. It was not a homeless man. It was a member of Tren de Aragua with a freaking torch, a literal mini flamethrower that was captured. And he was just one of about a dozen. But this is where the mask slips. What they're doing in California, and by the way, Newsom's wife just said that basically their goal is to make America California. Like, we didn't know that, but I think that they're actually trying to whistle past the graveyard at this point, because Trump and the golden age can't hear them over the roar of this incoming golden age. So their wishes and wants are irrelevant.
They have a new scandal right now because they have fired, Live Aid, Band Aid, now have fired. They raised $100 million for all those poor people at the Palisades fires who lost their homes. And now there's a massive scandal because it turns out none of that money has actually reached the victims, and everybody wants to know where the money went.
It went to
all these freaking NGOs.
Like about 200 different NGOs.
So this is another scandal for Newsom in California to deal with, on top of everything else that's been going on here. The high-speed rail, they spent $100 billion on it. They hasn't even laid any
Rail
track yet. The homeless initiative, we spent $80 billion on that or whatever it was. And now this Live Aid thing, and it's just like, well, I'm not involved in that. That's not me.
This is my wife, not me. Okay, last topic. The Fed visit.
He wants to run for president. Yeah, go for it,
Okay, talk to me about the Fed visit.
Well, I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of people that were terrified when Trump rolled out the trade reset and the tariffs that were going to be implemented. The reason they were terrified was not the reason that they said, "Oh my God, this will destroy our economy." And no. The reason they were terrified was they could instantly see, "Oh my God, this will work," and they don't want it to work because you have to understand that America has been living under for a long time now, since 1913. A private entity has been in charge of the country's fiscal and monetary policy, okay? It's actually a foreign-owned entity, but they don't admit that, right? All these families that actually dictate to the Fed what it will do, many of them do not live in America, right? So they're scared when Trump rolls this out beginning in March. Oh my God, this can work. Our power and our control over America, over the Congress, over all the banks here, over all the corporations here, it's all centered on our control of the monetary supply, which is based on our control of the debt. We hold the debt. We tell these people to jump, and they have to say how high. And the debt is what gives us that power. It's what gives us that control. And up until Trump rolled this plan out, they probably never thought he'd be audacious enough to actually try this. Up until he started rolling this plan out just a mere 4 months ago, okay, they never thought there was any viable way anyone would be able to kickstart, to remove all the artificial barriers that they had put in place. They never thought somebody like Trump would get in there and kickstart American wealth creation the way he has kickstarted it, and it's working. Now, Lutnick is saying on TV this morning they expect $700 billion in new revenue just from the tariff at the end of this year. That's $7 trillion in a decade. So, if you're the people who have been telling the American government what to do, you tell them who's who and what's what. You will do this, you will not do that. You've had that control because of the debt that you hold. And all of a sudden, this guy makes it clear, I can eliminate the debt. I can eliminate your debt. I can make it go away. All right? And the programs start to be broken. People have this idea, wow, it's $37 trillion right now. I think that's what it is. $37 trillion. Oh, we can never pay that off. Well, what if you discover about half of that isn't real? And it's actually due to fraud and theft. The American people have been the victims of a massive crime that's been going on for decades. We still don't know how long it's actually been going on. But I would assume it's been a long time. And they've had hundreds of billions of dollars stolen out of the Treasury every year. Okay, and and now that we know that this is what's been going on, are the American people really responsible for probably the half of the debt that was accrued via criminal RICO conspiracy and fraud and money laundering? I don't think so. So you have all of a sudden you go from a $37 trillion debt to about an $18 trillion debt.
So,
And then Trump saying, well, I'm going to be generating $700 billion just this year in new tariff revenues. And it will pick up speed when we get all of these other industries, $7 trillion or whatever it is, to move back into the United States and open up factories here and create new American jobs. And, these people that are in control of the debt, they run the Fed from behind the scenes. They're watching this. It's like, this was never supposed to happen. We're going to lose our control if he manages to do this. And this is why Jerome Powell looked like he was literally being held hostage in that video the other day where he's wearing the white hard hat and Trump's talking about, you're spending $3.1 billion on this new building. And he said, no, it's not that much. And, well, Trump's including the $900 million or whatever it was they spent on renovating that building 5 years ago. Just 5 years ago, they renovated the building, and now they're building a new Fed Mahal. It's like a Fed Mahal. For $2.1 something billion. Jerry Jones built Cowboy Stadium for like $1.8 billion. So Trump has put the spotlight on this, and he's showing people that the Fed isn't really what a lot of people think it is. People think it's part of the federal government, and it's not. So he's going to get the debt taken care of, and when he gets the debt cut in half, and then he starts getting them to cut the interest rates like they've been needing to do for a while now, and the revenues in this country just explode. It's actually not going to take that long to pay that debt off.
and imagine this, going back to Dan's memo. Imagine sifting through classified information and finding out that the preponderance of the debt that has been accrued is from wars that the CIA started. What happens then? And who was the CIA working for? The same oligarchs that control the Fed. And so you begin to see a much bigger picture emerging to this entire thing. So if you go back to the Korean War, which we've proven unequivocally was instigated, and you go back to the Vietnam War, which we know unequivocally was instigated, and you just follow through every single one of them. Iraq 1, Iraq 2, Afghanistan 1, supposedly with the Russians, and Afghanistan 2 to revive the poppy crop. You go back through every single one of those, and as you start to unpeel this onion, every single one of those things added massive amounts of debt to our the Treasury to pay for this. And if all of that was instigated at the behest of these people in order to drown us in debt, that goes to the point Brian's making of the fraud.
You don't even need a declared kinetic war to generate trillions of dollars in profit. What have they done with Iran since the Shah was deposed? how many trillions of dollars do they spend in the region containing the threat of the Iranian regime? You don't even need to have like an Iraq type invasion.
Correct.
You can generate hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of profits every year, making all these military bases and sending all these arms over there. I mean, you don't need a real shooting war. You understand? And that's what they've been doing.
So the other point I want to make is I made it, I think, on Friday. One of the revelations watching that interaction between President Trump and Jerome Powell, I had not heard anybody talk about what the actual renovation was. They were adding a basement. Now, let me explain, because I do have a degree in construction management. Let me explain this for a second. I live in Florida. Our water table can be as high as 2 feet down. If you try to build swimming pool, you have to do water mitigation to keep it away from where you're going to actually form and develop the pool. And then you backfill in all of that because the water table is so high here. You're literally talking a swamp in Washington, D.C. The water table is very high there. So in order to hide the fact that they were adding massive amounts of space to the Fed, which money-wise would have been much cheaper to add another floor to the top. You've got cranes, you bring them in, there's no water mitigation, you just add another floor. Well, why didn't they do that? Because they were hiding the fact that they were massively expanding the Federal Reserve building, and they were doing it by hiding it underground. The building of a basement underneath an existing building is monumentally more difficult and more expensive in order to be able to hide, if it's true, the allegations of money laundering with this operation as well. And so they had to do all of that. They had to build out around this. They had to support this entire marble palace and then go about adding the basement floor. And that was the first time anybody had talked about the fact that the renovation included a brand new story to the Federal Reserve building, all being built underground, out of eyesight from everyone. Now, hold on, Brian. You got to let Dwayne talk. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Trump positioned. He's always positioning. He's always campaigning. But wait, this is his last term, right? He's always campaigning on behalf of the American people. So that photo op with Jerome Powell is Donald Trump trolling the living flip. Same way to control my language. He's controlling the living flip out of the syndicate. He got Jerome Powell to basically take out his glasses.
Here's your piece of paper.
and he's looking at this, and he says, wait, you added I forgot what he called it. You added this other building. And Trump's like, these are your numbers. This is from your department. This is what you're spending the people's money. Now, I didn't know about any of the stuff you were just mentioning, but to me, the whole point I was going to make is it's clearly, okay, why are you spending $3.1 billion? Okay, can you justify that? And the answer would come back ultimately after all the rigmarole and all the back and forth is, I don't have to justify anything. We don't work for you.
And what is their mission? What expanded in that 5-year period?
But it's our money. That's the point. It's our money they're using, but the ultimate answer is
you're not accountable.
That they're not accountable. So at the end of the day, Donald Trump is preparing
all
to
of us
hold them accountable for what the flip they're doing with our money. Okay, because that is clear to me. It is forward, backward, side to side, up and down. Money laundering. They are stealing. It's just another form of theft. I don't care about the renovation. And again, how the hell do you spend $3.1 billion renovating 2 buildings or even building a building in DC? I don't believe it. I just don't believe it.
Okay, just touching on what you said about they're doing this underground because he's focusing on the fact that they're trying to do something where nobody can see it. Remember a while back, all that attention that was focused on the Kennedy Center and Rick Grenell talking about how,
Exactly.
and then Trump goes for a visit and he starts talking about the hidden rooms and the tunnels.
Yes,
Remember that?
in the basement.
In the basement.
Yeah, I don't think that was an accident.
Yeah. So, hey, let me get a basement too, so I can have tunnels. That's a great. So there you have it. That's our first, hopefully not our last, weekend review of the Trump administration and all of the things that you won't hear on the normal news, broken down with 2 of the big brainiacs and your Operation Gladio expert. So thanks for joining us. Have a nice rest of your weekend. And Brian, do you have a show coming up? Are you doing yours on a regular basis?
Maybe later. I can't stick to a regular schedule yet, but I'm streaming multiple times a week now. So yeah.
Awesome. And your Thunderdome is when?
I do Thunderdomes every weekday at 5 p.m. and then I do a chill fight usually every day, 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
Eastern Standard Time.
And y'all know that I do my Gladio book reviews at 4 on both Spaces and Rumble. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Give us some feedback, and if it works for you guys, you guys crack me up. We're gonna go
out of here. Okay.
We're gonna go have a wonderful, healthy dinner that I'm preparing, and there is no cake. So, Dwayne always asks me if there's cake. There's no cake. So you guys have a nice rest of your weekend. See you later.
No cake for you.
No cake for you.
I'll never get over that. She literally took the